Okay, so let's talk about updates to the Skillable Studio platform to start with. There's a few things that have actually changed. Obviously, one of the big ones that have changed is, of course, instruction sets, which I'm not going to talk about here at all, just purely because the whole section's on instruction sets. So obviously, I just wanted to highlight the fact that instruction sets are effectively one of the new features that exist. But we will cover those as and when we get to the relevant section in the content. Okay. The storage management page is back. Okay, so some of you would be familiar that we introduced this earlier on in the year. It actually turned out that it caused some performance challenges, so we had to take the storage management page away. But the good news is the storage management page is back. Okay, so if you've not seen it before, I'll just show you the storage management page. I'm going to show you it in our UAT system. And the only reason I'm showing it in the UAT system is just purely because we have a background process running at the moment, which is doing the initial data capture. So even though the data exists or the dashboard exists, you've got no data in it at the moment. Okay, so if I go into this particular organization here, it doesn't really matter if I go to the Microsoft or the VMware storage. When you get your list of files, the data grid is back that we put there in March and then we took away. Okay, so if you look at this in production, at the moment, you'll more than likely see that the child disks column and the references column is blank. Okay, so we've got some background processes which are just doing the initial data harvest before we populate the data in there. So you should see that get populated over the next few days. Obviously, we've got terabytes of storage to trundle through, so it's just taking a little while to get that initial data set. So what's this actually presenting to us? Just to sort of recap this again for people this is new for. Okay, so effectively what this is telling us with these two additional columns is, first and foremost, if a particular object has a child disk. So those that have built virtual machine labs on our platform quite a lot, you'll know that you sort of do this periodic save changes and we create a new snapshot or a new differencing disk. So effectively, this will tell you if there's any more disks in the chain. So effectively, you can see for disk 2 here, it's got no disks that are dependent on it. So there's nothing after it, effectively, okay, in the list. You've then got, obviously, where you've got numbers in here, which actually tell you there are disks that are dependent on it. So pretty straightforward. We'll look at what that 10 means in a moment. You've then also got the references column. So this effectively tells you if this particular object is connected to some form of profile. So this could be a virtual machine profile. This could obviously be a removable media profile if it's an ISO file, something like that, for example. Okay. So as you can see, if I look at that number 02 file again, it's got no dependence, but it is connected to a profile. Okay. Whereas you can actually see the 01 disk seems to have 10 child disks, which might seem quite strange as there's not even 10 files in here. We'll talk about that in a moment. But it does actually have the true, so it's tied to things. So why does this say 10 when it doesn't really look like it's going to be 10? Well, the reason for that is if I hit the details and we go and have a look at this, okay, it actually tells me that it's connected to 10 different virtual machine profiles. So really what our system has done has gone, oh, it's basically in these 10 profiles. So even though it's the same disk that's a child to it, it's effectively trying to tell you that actually there are 10 profiles that have a file in them that's dependent on this file. So this happens to be the same file every time, okay? But of course, these could be different files as well that have dependencies. You could have branches in your disk chain as well, okay? So that's where that 10 actually comes from, okay? So this obviously is going to make life a little bit easier for people that want to do storage management. If I just from here, if I think, well, I don't think I need this file anymore, or I don't need this file anymore, I can see straight here that it's got no dependencies. It's not in use by anything. Whereas before, these columns didn't exist and I would have to hit the details button and oh, the page is empty. Okay, I can now delete it. So at least it's going to allow me to be a bit quicker at removing content. Okay. And where we have got stuff that's still connected, if I think, well, this shouldn't be being used, but it is, obviously, at least I can see that straight from here, and then I can go to the details pane to see what it's connected to. Okay, so this is back. As I say, chances are, if you go and look at it, it won't have any data in it at the moment, but that data should get populated very soon. Okay. Something else that's changed. Okay, so this was actually something that we hinted at over the previous 2 lab developer workshops. We talked about, also on the previous 2 lab developer workshops, about activities. And of course, part of that involved things around scoring. So we've actually changed the user interface a little bit when enabling scoring on lab profiles and in the instructions. Okay, so there's a few things that we can actually have a little look at here. So first of all, in terms of the UI changes, hopefully everybody's familiar with the sort of little boxes at the top of the activities window. So you can turn on scoring. You can then choose that you want to show the scoring result upon completion. And you can then even choose to turn on details, which gets you the little gauge and the sort of more detailed scoring information. So that's been changed by the fact that we've either got a don't show. So that would be the same as both these 2 right-hand boxes sort of in the off position. We've got score only, which will be the middle box in the on position, but the right-hand box in the off position. And then we've got detailed, which is the same as those 2. So we've got that same functionality just replicated via a simpler drop-down box. Now, the one thing I can hear you all saying at this precise point is, well, where's the option that says, is scoring enabled? Okay, well, the way we determine whether scoring's enabled now is actually on the activity. So if you remember, the activities have a little tick box for scored. If effectively a box is ticked to scored, scoring's turned on. If the tick boxes for scoring are not turned on, then effectively scoring's not turned on. That's the way that it works. Okay. So that's the sort of surface changes that you more likely see when you're working as a lab developer. Okay. This does actually have some other additional implications from the point of view of administrative features and functions. Okay. One of the things that's changed, if I go into my environment, let me just drag this across here. Okay. I'm just going to sign in quickly. Okay. When we look at lab profiles, we actually effectively had 2 types of lab profiles. Just going to pick on one of these. Doesn't really matter what I pick on. We had lab profiles that were listed as lab profiles. Okay. We also had exam profiles. So effectively, when you turn scoring on, okay, it actually changed the lab profile, and the lab profile got listed as an exam profile, not a lab profile. Okay. So we no longer do that. Whether it's an exam or whether it's got scoring turned on or not, it's a lab profile. We don't do that toggle between exam and lab profile anymore. Okay. So that's also then means there's another change behind the scenes. And that would be a change that you would see if you do use some features in the Find Lab Profiles report. Okay. The key thing here, some of you might have used an option in the filter, which is exam. Okay. The is exam filter has now gone, or more to the point, has been renamed, is really what I should say. Okay. So is exam is no longer is exam. It is now listed as is scored. Okay. So a couple of just little differences there just for you to be aware of in terms of that change, which seems to be relatively simple in the UI, has a couple of other implications inside the products as well. Okay. So hopefully nothing too drastic, but ultimately sometimes it could just catch you out because you wasn't expecting those changes to have occurred. Okay.